There is a rare kind of thinking that doesn't just react to the world, it reshapes it. Most people spend their entire lives adapting to what's around them. They obey invisible rules. They live in cages they can't see. But a few, a very rare few, decide that the world will not dictate their reality. They choose how to think, and in doing so, they bend the world around their will. This isn't magic. It's not luck. It's a mindset so powerful, it reprograms reality itself. If you can think like this, the world will not just open its doors for you, it will rearrange itself to match your inner belief. Understand this. Reality is negotiable. You were taught it isn't. You were trained to think in straight lines, to follow the path that was laid out for you. Go to school, get a job, play it safe, blend in. But every extraordinary person who's ever lived saw that path and said, "No, that's not for me." They didn't ask permission to be different. They decided they were. And once the decision was made in the mind, the world around them had to follow. Your thinking is not just a reflection of the world. It is the blueprint that builds it. If you wake up thinking like the crowd, don't be surprised when your life looks like everyone else's. Most people think in limitations. They look at obstacles and say, "I can't." They look at dreams and say, "Not me." But the one who bends the world, they look at the same barrier and say, "I'll find a way." They look at the same closed door and say, "I'll build my own entrance." They've trained their mind to expect resistance and still push forward because they know the obstacle is not a sign to stop. It's a test of whether you're serious. The way you think must become a weapon, not a soft, passive stream of thoughts, but a focused, disciplined, and aggressive force that carves out reality. You cannot afford to think like everyone else. You cannot afford to wake up and scroll your way into distraction, complain your way into powerlessness, or compare your way into depression. The world is not kind to those who wait. It rewards those who believe first and move before they're ready. The ones who say, "Even if I don't know how, I will figure it out. Even if no one supports me, I will support myself. Even if I'm scared, I'll act like I'm fearless until I become it." Let me tell you something most people will never understand. Your mind is a command center. Whatever you consistently command, the world will begin to respond to. Think like a winner, and you'll notice you attract solutions. Think like a victim, and the world will bury you in excuses. Think like a leader, and you'll begin to shape others. Think like a follower, and life will treat you like one. Your external life is the mirror of your internal dialogue. If you don't like what you see around you, it's not the world you must fight. It's the mindset you must change. You are not born to follow. You are not born to play small, to dim your light, to apologize for dreaming big. Somewhere along the way, life might have convinced you that you should shrink, that being realistic is noble. But that was a lie told by those who gave up on themselves and didn't want to watch you rise. Don't swallow their limits. Spit them out. Rebuke the idea that you have to be like them. Your power is not in fitting in. It's in your unshakable belief that you were made for more, and your refusal to think like anything less than that. Thinking like this means you see everything differently. When others see time slipping away, you see an opening to create. When others see risk, you see potential. When others fold under pressure, you sharpen your focus. This mindset doesn't deny difficulty. It thrives in it because you've trained your mind to be stronger than your emotions. You've trained yourself to respond, not react. You're not trying to survive. You're here to dominate. You're not chasing validation. You're too busy building the version of you that no one can deny. Every time you decide to think like this, like the 1%, you pull yourself further away from average. Most people think success is about talent, or luck, or timing, number. It's about alignment. When your beliefs, your thoughts, and your actions are in full alignment with your vision, the world bends. Not because it wants to, but because it has no choice. You're moving with too much clarity, too much conviction, too much momentum. You become untouchable, not because life gets easier, but because you've become harder to shake. This is the mindset that breaks cycles. that changes family trees, that builds empires from nothing. If you want to stay where you are, think how you've always thought. But if you want to rise, if you want to bend the world to your vision, you must burn the old way of thinking to the ground. Replace doubt with discipline. Replace fear with faith. Replace comparison with creation. Every time you catch yourself thinking small, upgrade the thought. Every time you hear the voice of self-sabotage, replace it with a stronger truth. And here's the truth. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You're not too late. You're just underdeveloped in the mind. And that can be fixed. That can be trained. That can be rebuilt. But only if you're willing to kill the old identity and adopt the mind of someone who bends reality instead of waiting for permission from it. Now listen closely. The world doesn't care about your potential. It doesn't care how smart you are, how talented you are, how many dreams you have buried inside you. It responds only to one thing: how you think and what you do about it. The people you admire, the ones who seem untouchable, unstoppable, larger than life. They didn't wait for proof they were worthy. They didn't wait for guarantees. They acted, and the world responded. They thought differently, and that thinking became gravity, pulling opportunities, people, and breakthroughs toward them. But most people, they think in reverse. They say, I'll believe in myself when things start working. Things start working when you believe in yourself. That's the shift. That's the doorway. That's where the old you dies and the powerful you begins. You don't wait for circumstances to give you permission. You become the cause of your own change. You walk into every room, every day, every problem thinking, I'm not here to be affected by the world. I'm here to affect it. And that thought, that level of mental authority, is where true power lives. Not in arrogance, not in fake confidence, but in the quiet, unshakable knowing that you are the author of your story, not a character living in someone else's plot. When you adopt that thinking, you no longer see failure as defeat. You see it as data. You see rejection as redirection. You stop begging life to be easier, and instead you demand that you become greater. That's how the world bends, not by force, by alignment. Think about this. When you touch a flame, it burns you, not because it chooses to, but because that's its nature. Fire doesn't ask for permission to be powerful. It doesn't try to please anyone. It just is. And that's how you must think, with that same unapologetic nature. You don't shrink because others are uncomfortable. You don't dull your mindset because people around you live in fear. You don't lower your standards to fit in. You rise above. And if others feel threatened, that's their lesson to learn, not yours to carry. The world bends for those who become clear. Clarity of purpose is magnetic. It cuts through noise. When you know who you are, what you want, and where you're going, you become impossible to ignore. You walk differently. You speak with authority. Your energy shifts from seeking approval to commanding presence, and the universe listens. Why? Because clarity creates focus, and focus creates momentum. And momentum, that's what most people never build. They hesitate, overthink, start and stop, doubt themselves to death. But you think like this, like someone who's already arrived mentally, and now you're just catching up physically. Let me ask you something right now. What if the only thing between you and everything you want is the way you think about yourself? What if the world isn't ignoring you? It's simply waiting for you to show up like you believe you belong here? That's the difference between the average and the elite. Not talent, not money, not timing, it's identity. The average person waits to become before they act like they are. The elite, they act like they already are, and so they become. This is not pretending. This is alignment. When your mind moves as if you've already earned it, the work you do, the risks you take, the presence you carry, all reflect that inner certainty. And eventually, the world must respond, because reality bends to consistency. It bows to resilience. It follows conviction. If you wake up every day thinking like a king, like a leader, like someone who cannot be denied, then life will eventually have no choice but to place the crown on your head. But you must be ruthless with your mind, ruthless with what you allow in, because every thought is a seed, and what you plant grows. If you water doubt, it grows. If you feed fear, it grows. But if you obsessively plant thoughts of strength, ownership, action, then your mindset becomes impenetrable. That's how you outgrow the old life. You don't run from it. You outthink it. You rise above it mentally until it no longer fits you. You want to rise? Then kill the old thinking. The part of you that says, I'll try. Number, you'll do. The part of you that says, I hope things get better. Number, you'll make them better. The part of you that waits for someone to believe in you. Number, you become your own source of belief. You stop outsourcing your self-worth to people who don't even believe in themselves. You stop handing over your destiny to circumstances. You reclaim ownership over the one thing no one can ever take, your mind. Because once your mind is right, the rest of your life has no choice but to catch up. If you're ready to stop waiting, stop doubting, and start thinking like the world responds to your energy, then drop this in the comments. I am the cause, I am the change, I bend reality. Because most people will never come here. They'll quit too soon, get uncomfortable, fall back asleep. But you're still here. That means something in you is waking up. Let's expose the truth most people run from. The world doesn't owe you clarity. You must build it yourself. No one's coming to hand you purpose, to hand you a roadmap, or to whisper, now is your time. That voice, it has to come from you, from deep within, from the version of you that's been locked behind years of hesitation, the version of you that's been starving for permission to be powerful. But the only permission that matters is the one you give yourself. And once you give it, the world will adjust. You've got to start thinking like a force of nature. A storm doesn't knock, a wave doesn't ask, a wildfire doesn't check who's watching. They move, they reshape, they claim space. You must move through life the same way. Not arrogantly, not with ego, but with certainty, with command. Because if your thoughts are hesitant, the world mirrors that. If your mind is divided, your results will be diluted. But if your mind is unified, if every thought is pulling in the same direction, then success becomes inevitable. It might not be immediate, but it becomes undeniable. Start thinking like this. You're not chasing success. You're becoming the kind of person who attracts it. You're not hoping for the right opportunity. You're preparing so powerfully that when opportunity appears, it recognizes you as its match. You're not waiting for people to see your worth. You're building a version of yourself so undeniable, they have no choice but to adjust how they see you. Let's be clear. The greatest shift in your life will never come from an outside event. Not a promotion, not a relationship, not a lucky break. It will come from that moment, the one you're standing in right now, when you finally decide, I will never again think like the person who settles. I will never again think like someone who tolerates mediocrity. I will never again think like someone who has to be motivated. Because from this moment on, I am the source of my own drive. Most people never even realize their mind is a prison. They live in stories that were handed to them. Stories about what's realistic, what's possible, what's good enough. But that's not truth. That's programming. That's someone else's fear, passed down like a family heirloom. And if you're not ruthless, you'll inherit it. You'll wear it. You'll defend it. And worst of all, you'll pass it down to the next version of you. But not you, not anymore. Because now you know the prison isn't real. The lock was always on the inside. And now that you've found the key, your thinking, you can step out and never go back. Start thinking like you are the standard. Not in the future, not when you achieve more. Now act like you've already won the war in your mind. Because once you win there, nothing outside can defeat you. You become unshakable, not because life is easy, but because your thoughts are trained. Focused, disciplined, relentless. You walk through storms with your head high, because the storm outside is nothing compared to the silence and strategy inside. You've built a mind that doesn't just survive chaos, it converts it into strength. This is what bends the world. a mind that no longer conforms, but creates, a soul that no longer begs, but builds, a vision so clear it burns away doubt on sight. If you're ready to kill the old mindset and walk like you own your future, comment below, "My thinking is the weapon, and I am fully armed." Let's see who's really rising. Let's talk about identity, because the way you think is just the surface. The root is who you believe you are. And here's the truth most avoid. You can't outperform your identity. You can't rise above the person you believe yourself to be, no matter how many goals you write down, no matter how many affirmations you repeat. If deep down you still see yourself as broken, as a failure, as someone who's trying but never arriving, the world will reflect that right back to you. Your identity is the thermostat of your life. You can hustle, grind, push, but if your identity is set to 70 degrees, the moment you start heating up, you'll find a way to cool yourself back down. Self-sabotage, distraction, fear, imposter syndrome. It's not a lack of ability. It's a mismatch between your vision and your identity. So what's the answer? You change the way you see yourself. Not slowly, not subtly, but radically. You stop thinking like someone who's trying to change and start thinking like someone who already is changed. You wake up and act like the person you said you'd become, not because it's fake, but because it's training. Because identity is built through repetition, through conscious choice, through daily evidence that you are not who you used to be. You want the world to respond differently? Start giving it a different version of you. Talk differently, move differently, show up with different standards. Expect more from yourself and never explain it, because your new identity is not up for negotiation. You don't owe anyone an apology for becoming powerful. You think the elite ask for permission to evolve? Number. They burn bridges to their old self and walk like the new one is already crowned. That's the only way you force the world to take you seriously. By thinking, moving, and living as if you're already who you decided to be. Because the moment you do that, the world bends. It doesn't understand why you suddenly have presence, why people now listen when you speak, why you walk into a room and everything shifts. But you know why? It's because you finally stopped treating your potential like a maybe and started treating it like your standard. You want internal momentum? Stop waiting to feel like it. Start leading yourself. Self-leadership is the highest form of thinking. It's when you no longer need external validation to keep going. You don't need applause. You don't need approval. You decide what needs to be done, and you do it every day, especially when it's hard, especially when no one's watching, because you've realized something most people never do. You are not your emotions. You are the commander of them. You are not your thoughts. You are the architect that selects which ones live and which ones die. You are not your past. You are the evidence that change is real because you chose it. And when you live like that, when you think like that, your life becomes unstoppable, not because challenges disappear, but because you no longer fear them. You use them. You bend them to build you. That's real power, not control over others. Control over yourself. If you're ready to stop negotiating with your old self and start commanding your future, comment below. I don't rise to my goals, I rise to my identity. They can talk big when it's easy. They believe in themselves when the path is clear. But the moment life tightens, when the money runs out, when people start doubting them, when nothing seems to be working, they fall back. They shrink. They tell themselves, maybe it's not meant to be. But the truth, pressure doesn't break you. It reveals you. Pressure is where the world asks you one question. Do you really believe what you say you believe? Do you really have faith in your vision? Or were you just flirting with the idea of greatness? Because pressure is not the enemy. It is the environment where diamonds are forged. It's the filter that separates the ones who only wanted it from the ones who refuse to live without it. The people who bend the world, they expect pressure. They plan for it. They welcome it because they know pressure is proof that you're moving into a higher realm. And if the weight feels heavy, good. It means your character is growing stronger than your excuses. Let me tell you something. You don't build a powerful life by avoiding difficulty. You build it by training your mind to dominate difficulty. You build it by choosing discomfort deliberately every day. So when life throws real chaos at you, it feels like practice. You don't beg for things to get easier. You train yourself to get better. But you can't do that if you care what everyone thinks. You'll never rise if you're addicted to approval, because greatness, real greatness, requires isolation at times. It requires seasons where no one claps, where no one understands you, where they call you crazy, arrogant, obsessed, and that's okay, because they shouldn't understand you. They weren't given your vision. They weren't built for your path. They haven't paid the price you're willing to pay. So stop expecting applause from people who are too scared to chase their own potential. You must become immune to opinions. You must walk with such deep inner knowing that silence doesn't shake you, that judgment doesn't slow you, that rejection doesn't define you. The world bends to the one who doesn't flinch. And here's what most don't realize. When you stop chasing approval, you gain influence. When you stop trying to be liked, you become respected. Because power respects power, and no one respects a person who doesn't even respect their own vision. So you walk, not with arrogance, but with unshakable presence. You speak with clarity. You move with certainty. You execute without delay, because you've trained your thinking to rise above noise, fear, and comfort. You don't chase quick wins, you build a legacy. Legacy thinking is the final shift. It's when your decisions are no longer about just today, but about who you are becoming for the next decade. It's when you start to realize everything you do is writing a story, and one day the world will read it. Your kids, your family, the people who watched you rise. They will see the evidence of your thinking. So make sure the life you build proves the strength of your mindset. Because if you think like the masses, you'll die like the masses. But if you train your mind like it's the most valuable asset you own, if you discipline your thoughts like a warrior preparing for war, you won't just build a life. You'll reshape the world around you. See, most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they treat motivation like fuel, and motivation burns out fast. But the world doesn't bend for the inspired. It bends for the relentless. And that kind of consistency, that kind of mental sharpness, it only comes from habits that harden your identity. It comes from rituals that make your thinking bulletproof. You can't just hope to think this way. You train for it. Every single day, wake up with intention. Before the noise of the world invades your head, own your mind. Not with distractions, not with scrolling, but with silence, with reflection, with purpose. Ask yourself, who am I becoming today? What must I do to deserve the future I say I want? Because that's how real thinkers operate. Not reactively, but deliberately. They don't drift, they design. You must master your morning, because the first thing you give your attention to becomes your anchor. Most people lose the battle by 8 a.m. They hand their focus over to chaos, to fear, to comparison, and then they wonder why they feel powerless. But you'll do it different. You'll wake up and install power into your mind. Through movement, through breath, through words that build you, you'll create space where you can hear your own thoughts and choose the ones that serve your mission. This is where transformation lives, not in emotion, but in ritual. You train your mind like an athlete trains their body, with discipline, with repetition, with non-negotiables. You don't try to be focused. You decide to be focused. You don't hope to stay consistent. You build systems so you never fall off. Because you understand your habits are not just actions. They are the proof of your mindset. When you choose discipline over comfort, when you choose clarity over chaos, when you choose purpose over pleasure, you build inner gravity. You start pulling the future toward you, because everything you do now screams, I'm serious. I'm not just wishing, I'm working. I'm not just dreaming, I'm demonstrating. And this kind of daily thinking, it compounds. It builds mental compound interest. One day you look up and realize you no longer have to think like this. You are like this. It's in your nature. You've upgraded your operating system. You've rewired your instincts. You don't have to get back on track. You are the track. And the world, it starts bending without you even trying. Because your energy, your discipline, your identity, they speak before you do. People can feel your focus. Opportunities sense your preparation. Doors don't just open, they swing off the hinges. But none of that happens if you keep waiting to feel ready. It happens when you create the kind of daily mindset that forges readiness through action. You move before the fear disappears. You show up before the confidence arrives. You start walking like the person you've promised yourself you'll become. Because this next part, it separates the amateurs from the masters. Let's talk about failure and how most people completely misunderstand it. They think failure is the end, a full stop, a red light, a sign they're not good enough. But if you think like that, life will break you. Because failure isn't something you escape. It's something you build through. And until you learn how to think correctly about failure, it will own you. Let me be clear, the world doesn't bend for those who avoid failure. It bends for those who convert failure into fuel. Because failure is not evidence that you're losing. It's evidence that you're in the arena. It's the bruises, the scars, the lessons that sharpen you. It's the initiation fee for those who want a legendary life. The masses retreat when they fall. They personalize it. They say, this always happens to me. Number, it doesn't always happen to you. It happens to everyone, but only the weak-minded attach identity to it. The powerful, they collect failure like trophies. They study it. They extract wisdom from it. They stack it beneath their feet and rise even higher because of it. You want to bend the world? Then stop fearing mistakes. Crave refinement. Welcome redirection. Fall fast, fall often, and fall forward. Because every time you get back up, you're not the same. You're wiser, sharper, more resilient, and slowly your failures stop being losses and start becoming proof that you're growing. But this requires a brutal shift in thinking. You must stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? Because that's the only mindset that creates momentum out of pain. Every setback becomes strategy. Every rejection becomes redirection. Every mistake becomes mastery if you refuse to break mentally. And here's the raw truth. Your pain is not the problem. It's your interpretation of pain. Pain is data, pain is pressure, pain is fire. And you can either let it burn you down, or you can use it to burn down the parts of you that were never strong enough to carry your future anyway. This is why emotional intelligence is non-negotiable. You must train your mind to feel pain and still move, to feel doubt and still act, to feel fear and still advance. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is feeling every ounce of fear and deciding to be stronger anyway. This is what world benders understand. The breakthrough is always behind the breakdown. The moment where you want to quit, that's the exact moment where your old self is dying. That's where the new you is born, if you refuse to back down. You have to be relentless, not emotionally unstable, not erratic, but calm under fire. Steady when it's storming, unshakable when nothing is going according to plan. Because power is not loud, it's controlled. And once your mind can withstand chaos, you become untouchable. The world bends to the one who keeps showing up long after everyone else has gone home. This is momentum. And momentum is earned, not through luck, but through mental endurance. You don't sprint your way to mastery. You grind your way there, one intentional step at a time. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be relentless. One more rep, one more rejection, one more painful day that you conquer anyway. Because if you can master yourself through the storm, you don't just survive, you emerge stronger than the version of you that walked in. You become dangerous, focused, calm, capable of enduring anything without losing your direction.